Hi, all. Hi. I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine. Nice. I hope it was something really cool. Well, I'm Kira. May the 4th be with you, and this is my very blunt chapel speech about everything. And this may be a little bit chaotic, just like life, so strap in. My initial speech was completed in September because I thought the application was the due date. Lesson number 1, read emails thoroughly. Anyway, I wrote how I was finally mentally and physically healthy for once. I had a perfect social life to fit me at the time. Life was great. It was full of everything that I loved all the time. Then it was even more great. And I talked about how far I had come from my lowest point. It was meaningful, pretentious, hopeful, had a meaningful message, but it was almost completely useless to tell y'all today. Because fast forward to today, the 6 a.m. rise and grinds are replaced with sleepless nights making music and the incapabilities to sleep. Nightly lessons have become my excuse to be in the practice rooms every second of every day, improving my skills, just like not the social ones. And working out comes when I have time, rather than moving my life around to lift up heavy things. Now, is that really bad? Is that a bad change? Did I lose it all that I had once before? No, they're both fine. Okay, let's backtrack. My philosophy has always been, I'm going to suffer in whatever I do, so I have to choose how I want to suffer. You're gonna die. I don't make the rules, but it's gonna happen. And that's why this is really important to think about. You have to prioritize your life and your suffering, because when you die, it's gonna be alone. So put your suffering into your own hands for once. It doesn't have to be that bad, don't worry. But the good is usually tied in with the worst parts, like, to be as shredded as I am, I have to suffer the loud, hot, sweaty ambiance of the gym to enjoy my shoulder presses. Or, to become the musician that I wanna be, I have to sacrifice some of my time, hobbies, and relationships to feel that electricity on stage. You create a beauty in the suffering that you choose. So the sooner you figure out how you want to suffer, then you can start to create your perfect life, until the suffering becomes your living perfection. But this requires a load of introspection. I mean, months, years of the same question, who are you? And though this may change, to begin your suffering, you need to think, and ironically, it's pretty hard, but when I'm done, maybe ask yourself, why? But don't set it on yourself too hard, because this can always change, and I'll talk about that later. But when you tie in the suffering with your goals, your self-discipline and accountability are the only thing in between your life and everything else. Notice how I didn't say success, because although we may want to, most of us won't. And we might feel like it here, but we're not gods, so don't expect that universal control. But thinking and disciplining yourself gives you the control over yourself, which is very, very easy to lose. For some perspective, around a year ago, I had a really big issue with mirrors. I just couldn't look in them without getting really, really annoyed, so I wouldn't. Because when I did, I felt like the person looking back at me was a stranger. I'd look at past versions of myself in photos and compare them to what I saw, and I thought they were too different, because I didn't know who they were. They were too different, and I never stopped to think what I was doing every day, who I was living for, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't think about what I needed to do to feel alive. I honestly didn't feel connected to anything or anyone at all. I just felt empty. And I was constantly coasting, guilty of one thing or another that I wasn't doing to feel alive or whole. Obviously, that changed. For one, I found my music and the beauty I could appreciate through others, or the beauty that I could create to electrify my heart and give a purpose to it beating. But there, I started building who I wanted to become. I found part of my why. The so-called self-construction became everything to me. I had to become everything from the nothing that I was before, not for anyone else, but for myself, because it made me feel so good. Okay, so I had good intentions. I'm doing this for myself. Then why can't I now? I seem to have mastered the art of everything. Why is it so different now compared to 6 months ago? Is it nothing again? What changed? Time. People change. I change. People get busy. There's no balance because life isn't fair. And as times change, we can try desperately to hold on to our romanticized versions of the past. I tried grasping onto her happiness, doing all that she did, the workouts, the food, the lifestyle, and the restrictions. I rejected my current life to become what I felt was better. We can look back and pick and choose the best in us, but if we end up throwing away the breaks, the nothing, the tough times, and calling it healthy, we're just going to lie to ourselves, because that isn't. That's just destroying yourself. I realized it wasn't perfection. I was destroying everything I had already become. I tried so hard to balance everything all the time that I was stripping myself of all the other experiences I had yet to see. And before the break, just like a lot of us here, I was stressing about universities. And I shut myself almost completely out from friends and family. I was in the practice room, constantly trying to be better, a better sister, a better singer, a better performer, a better daughter, alive and whole. I didn't feel like I had any of it. And I pushed myself too hard that when Christmas break began, I started to hate music, and I didn't sing a single note until it ended. My why became all I was, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And that really sucked. But when I got back, I took my rest, and I tried to get right back into it. Luckily, I started feeling that joy every time I held a mic again, and I'll be doing that at U of T for the next 4 years as a result. But don't let this fool you. I still love music now, but I didn't then, because now I know my limits. I'm not all of what I may be good at. I also understand that this passion may change, and if it does, it does. If I wake up and I hate music tomorrow, that's gonna suck, but it'll be what it'll be. I cannot destroy all the other things in life, because I have to improve at just one, just like I cannot reject myself today because she can't do everything that she once could. I am not who I was. I've grown and I've learned from it, but do not need to be all of it at once because I just don't want to anymore. I am more and less than I was yesterday, and that is perfectly fine. It's beautiful because that is just life. There's never truly balance either. When you have everything, when do you balance in the nothing? Because the nothing is very, very important here too. Like, Arts Day was probably the busiest and best day of my school year, and I've never felt more alive than singing and jazzing around on stage with the rest of the class as everyone else was up there singing Move On Up with us. That moment felt genuinely alive to me, and I loved it for it. But the next day, death, gone. And you know what? It was just as important to drink coffee with my class first period and talk around half dead with my teacher as it was screaming on stage the night before. Because I don't need to facilitate a perfectly constructed life to be happy. You don't need to restrict your food if you ate too much the day before. You don't need to run to exhaustion if you missed a workout. You don't need to shoot out your voice if you missed a practice. But you do need to push yourself to be better, just not to the point you've stretched so far you cannot ever see yourself again. Push far enough for beautifully ugly change. Now, comparing to others is always really ambiguous with this as well, such as you might overthink other people's abilities to you. You can't do something because someone else did. They're suffering, their life. But just deal with it and play piano, kick a ball, I don't know what you like doing, do something to remind yourself that you are alive and that it only matters to you. Your why shouldn't and will never be the same, better, or worse than anyone else's. So just do your own thing at times. You can be with other people later. Just remind yourself you are here. And you may be sitting there thinking, the advice of just doing something without thinking is useless and obvious, but it's literally the only thing to do unless you want to sit around and feel terrible about yourself. And if it's not a hobby, that's fine. Try something new. Scream, run in a forest, throw eggs, legally, kick something. Remind yourself you're alive in some way, no matter what that is, then do something else. Disciplining your mind to suffer and actually move in a way that won't ruin your well-being is really the only way to adapt to life's curveballs. And if you have another one, let me know. But even if it hurts, let it. Then try to get up and do something that hurts a little less in this way and a little bit better in a different way. And if it doesn't work, keep trying. Because I'm not going to sit here and tell you all the ways you can do that because I don't know you. I don't know what's going to work for you, but you have to keep trying and figure out something. And if it's not the perfect thing, as long as it's good, that's perfectly okay. But in the end, you do need to figure this out, because this is how you figure out what being alive actually means to you. Life is not a scale to even out. Life will never be fair, but it should be yours, and that's all that's going to matter in the end. Man, I'm not a construction worker. I'm talking about all this creation and destruction. I'm just an 18-year-old who otherwise would not have been talking to y'all in this big room full of people. But even at this old age of 18, I can still choose my suffering, and I chose to read this speech to y'all and write it up and then preach it to you guys instead of sitting through another 10 to 15 minute speech. So boom, point me, I guess. So leaving here, I'd like you all to ask yourself a few questions. Like, why am I alive? How am I going to suffer? What makes me feel whole again? Is temperature or flavor? Figuring out your why will foster the control you need to feel alive. No matter what life throws at you, let your why move you forward, but also be flexible to change as you go. Don't just coast until your face becomes a stranger. Make the mistakes, hurt, suffer until your life becomes alive. Maybe that why is to build a door hinge in a truck. Maybe it's to run places kind of fast. Maybe it's to see someone's eyes light up when you talk to them. Whatever it is, even if it's not pretty, give something a shot and figure out the rest as it comes. Or don't. In the end, the only one who's really going to care about you and your life is you when it's too late, so do what you like. Okay, before we clap or do anything radical, I would like to ask if you could sing this one really, really loud and clap really, really loud, because this is my favorite hymn. I love you, Jenna. Love you, Mom. That's it.